Merry Christmas!
The holiday season is upon us, which means it's that magical time of year when you can watch It's a Wonderful Life on every single channel.
Ernie! You were here on my wedding night!
No, can't.
This film is arguably the high point of Jimmy Stewart's illustrious career, earning him a Best Actor nomination and still sitting atop Esquire's prestigious Top 40 Christmas Movies of all time.
Merry Christmas! Reporters, where's Mary?
Comparatively, the book that inspired the classic film has far less notoriety. If you try to find it on the internet, you might waste a lot of time on a fruitless search wishing someone had told you ahead of time that the book is called The Greatest Gift.
The wee little book that inspired the movie was written by Philip Van Doren Stern. The thing is less than 40 pages with a nice big font and a handful of drawings.
Looking at this tiny book, you'll wonder how Frank Capra and his writing team turned it into a 130-minute film. Fortunately, we're about to tell you. I'm Clint Gage.
And I'm Casey Redman, and it's time to ask...
What is it you want, Barry?
No, just what's the difference?
Both the film and the book start on Christmas Eve. In the book, George is looking over the edge of a bridge, while in the movie we hear people in the town of Bedford Falls praying for God to help George.
A lot of people asking for help for a man named George Bailey.
At that point, things diverge massively. The book's entire plot serves as just the last third of the film. The rest of the movie's story was invented for the screen, starting with the conversation between God, Joseph, and an angel named Clarence. Here we get some backstory and a narrative vehicle that can jump through time as we learn about our protagonist and the history that brought George to the point of suicide.
You sent for me, sir?
Yes, Clarence.
While the movie introduces Clarence in the cosmos, Doran Stern thrusts him into earthly matters immediately. Also, the author didn't bother to name the angel swooping in to help George, just calling him Stranger. We're going to keep calling him Clarence in both mediums because it's easier. Is everybody cool?
So, book and movie Clarence's purpose is to show George what his town would be like if he'd never been born. When George makes and is granted this wish, it delivers us into a Dickensian world where George gets a terrifying what-if glimpse of life without himself.
The book starts with this moment. Everyone we meet is meeting George as a stranger, with their backstory only coming through George's thoughts.
The movie keeps George's wish moment for the end, which makes the audience care more about the world George is exiled from. We get scenes from childhood. George saves his brother Harry from drowning. George keeps the grieving pharmacist Mr. Gower from accidentally poisoning a child. George helps his hardworking father stand up to greedy Mr. Potter. Then we jump ahead to see Jimmy Stewart playing a man of about 20, and not necessarily looking or sounding the part.
Dance by the light of the moon. What'd you wish when you threw that rock?
Anyway, these events from George's youth paint him as a wonderful man, a person you have to care about because he cares so deeply about others. It makes us eager to find out what went wrong. But again, the movie adds a ton of new material to flesh out the wee 40-page booklet into a less wee feature film runtime, so a lot of little differences really start to add up.
Things like how George doesn't leave Bedford Falls in the movie because his father has a stroke and dies, leaving George to take over the family business. But in the book, George's father is alive and well. Look at him, still kicking.
Or that George spends the whole movie fighting with old Mr. Potter, who tries to push everyone out of business and very nearly causes George to kill himself. In the book, there's no Mr. Potter.
Or how in the movie George can't hear out of one ear from when he saved his brother from drowning in icy waters. But in the book, they were swimming in August and he hears just fine.
There are lots and lots of these examples, so let's jump ahead to what happens after Clarence the Guardian Angel arrives. Movie Clarence dives into the freezing river, forcing George to jump in and save him. The angel then boldly refers to himself as an angel, saying he's come from heaven and making both George and the tower guard think he's nuts.
Angel second class.
Book Clarence isn't as on the nose, just making it clear that he wants to help George. He grants George's wish of never being born, and then gives him a satchel full of brushes, so George can pretend to be a traveling brush salesman when he meets people around town. You know, keep a low profile.
Clarence lingers in the movie, walking along as George looks for his car. The book makes no mention of George being absolutely hammered when he first meets Clarence, while in the movie he's already been in a bar fight, stumbled out into the snow, and then crashed his car into a neighbor's tree. It's all because Uncle Billy lost $8,000 and George thinks he's going to jail over it, an important motivation in the movie that's not in the book. But more on that in a minute.
The tree that gets hit in the movie still has literary relevance, as in the book, George walks past it and remembers when his car had scratched some of the bark off and left a scar. That scar is now gone, and it's the first indicator that something funny is going on. As Book George sees more evidence that something's amiss, he realizes he needs to play Clarence's game and pretend to be a stranger in order to figure out who's who and what's what.
Movie George is drunk and angry, yelling at everyone about how they know him and he knows them. Of course, he can get away with this in the film because we know what he's been through. We know these people, and we're also upset when they treat George like a lunatic. But the two biggest differences between the literary and cinematic worlds of Bedford Falls after George Bailey stopped existing are the town itself and Mary.
Well, this ought to be Martini's place.
The town is essentially the same in the book, just that the people closest to George have changed. In the movie, the place is now called Pottersville, and it's full of bars and dancing clubs. I guess this is bad, but it honestly looks kind of fun.
As for Mary, she's with a different man in the book, Art Jenkins. George's visit with her is cut short when Art comes home, and that is what sends George looking for Clarence to make everything right again.
For Frank Capra and the movie version, it had to be darker. Instead of being married to a drunk abuser, she is unmarried and works at the library. Oh, Mary, not the books! Movie Mary, beautiful as she was, never found a man without George Bailey in the world, and had to wear glasses. When George tracks her down, not only does she look like a nerd, she also doesn't recognize him and thinks he's potentially a deranged killer. Just like in the book, interacting with Mary sends George over the edge, and he heads back to the bridge to pray for things to return to normal.
Get me back, I don't care what happens to me. Get me back to my wife and kids.
At this point, the book leans pretty heavily into the gravity of suicide. George was about to give away the greatest gift of all, the gift of life. The movie mentions suicide being a terrible and illegal thing, but the emphasis is on how rich George's life was, how many people he touched, and lives he made better.
Once life goes back to normal, Book George cruises through town, happily revisiting all the places he went when he was a stranger. The movie features a similar run, but with all the people we met over the last 2 hours of watching. He even yells Merry Christmas to evil Mr. Potter.
Happy New Year to you! In jail!
Evil Mr. Potter might be the biggest plot point in the movie that leads to deviations from the book. George is just generally sad in Dorn Stern's story, upset about being stuck in a dead-end job and never really having done anything with his life.
George deals with the malaise in the movie, but the reason he's thinking about jumping off a bridge is that Uncle Billy accidentally put an envelope with 8 G's in Potter's newspaper, and Potter kept it because he knew it would ruin George's lending company. He even called for George's arrest because Potter sucks. So, while Movie George is stoked to be alive and running through town like a maniac, there's still the issue of the missing money.
I've got a little paper.
I'll bet it's a warrant for my arrest. Isn't it wonderful? I'm going to jail.
Conversely, everything is completely hunky-dory in the book as he speeds home. He's got no loose ends to tie up, so he just gets to smooch his wife and be happy, which is exactly what he does. Then before he can launch into the story of his crazy night, he notices the brush he gave her, back when he was a brush salesman who never existed. What? Thor and Stern wanted us to think that angels might be real, but their brushes are 100% real. Of that, I am sure.
When Movie George gets home, happy as he is, we still don't know how he'll get out of the jam. That's when we get the famous, heartwarming scene with all the people from Bedford Falls whose lives George Bailey has touched coming in to pour money on the dining room table. All the fabricated backstory pays off in the biggest way, with everyone playing a part in George's salvation. Finally, instead of finding a brush left behind in the book, George finds a copy of Tom Sawyer left behind and dedicated to George by Clarence. Dear George, remember no man is a failure who has friends. Thanks for the wings. Love, Clarence. Bell rings, angel wings, happy tears.
Clarence's line really hits its mark and defines the beauty of the film that doesn't exist in the book. George never realized his plans from early adulthood, staying broke in Bedford because he couldn't stop helping people. Then in the hour of his greatest need, thanks to all the people who once needed him, he sees what a wonderful life he's got.
And that's it. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and remember, every time you like a CineFix video, an angel gets its wings, see? I don't have your wings here, Clarence. Your wings are in that CineFix video, and that movie list, and that old episode of Things You Didn't Know.
Merry Christmas, everyone.